yourself as well as everybody else. So tonight we're going to be asking you, to use your imagination and get creative. You're not going to have to draw anything or make anything, but it's all about using your mind. So hopefully you are up for that. Katie's here from Portugal. Awesome. You're not usually around on a Monday, Katie. Nice to see you. Keep checking in, guys. And I'm going to bring in Hazel. So let's, Caro, if you don't mind asking her to unmute and bring her onto our screen so we can see our special guest. Here she is. Hello. Let me read a bit of blurb about you, my darling. So from athlete to therapist, then author, Hazel Gale is now turning her hand to self-development games and tech. And as you're soon to find out, Hazel is a huge advocate for using make-believe and imagination to improve our mental well-being. Her latest project is the mental health gaming app Betwixt, an interactive novel that helps you unlock your creativity and make sense of yourself, which I think sounds pretty awesome. At tonight's event, she's going to be introducing us to that and demonstrating how stories and games can improve our well-being. And she's going to be sharing tools on journaling and self-reflection, as well as science-backed techniques for gaining clarity and closure, because Hazel is all about the science and the evidence behind all this stuff. Aren't you, Hazel?
Yep.
Yeah. Welcome.
Hi there.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're part of the self-help family now, I feel like. I missed you.
Yeah, I know. I've missed well, everyone in person.
Yeah, life, but we're getting there, we're getting back, slowly but surely. Yeah. So before we start and you start sharing kind of what you're working on now, and we're going to go in through to the practical stuff, for anyone who doesn't know, can we talk a little bit about you? I mean, I've introduced you, I think, there as therapist, author, kickboxer, app entrepreneur. So how do you describe yourself now? And what does your day look like today, for instance?
I should have some snappy title that I've made up, like therapeutic storyteller or something, but I totally don't. Whenever anyone asks me what I do exactly what you just did and list all those things, and it's a real mouthful. But I guess my primary job is therapist. You know, I've been running my private practice since 2011, but it's not where I spend most of my time these days at all. I only see clients on Mondays, actually. So today's been a client day. Tuesdays I work for an app called Clementine, which is a women's wellness app which uses cognitive hypnotherapy, sort of guided visualizations to help people feel more confident and in control. It's a wonderful, wonderful product, really down to earth and sort of street language sort of hypnotherapy, which is great. And the other cool thing about that is that it's the polar opposite of Betwixt, which is what I spend the rest of my time doing, because that's a fantastical, magical world of weirdness, which we'll be talking about a bit today. The other bit of my background, of course, is the boxing part. I was a boxer and kickboxer on the international circuit for 10 years, and mainly kickboxing, and won a couple of world titles in kickboxing, then moved over to boxing, spent 5 years doing that. And while I was doing that, I burnt out horrendously because of just entirely the wrong mindset. And that burnout, I can say thankfully now looking back, caused me to have to face my demons and look at all the stuff that I was doing wrong and get real about a few things. And the process of going through therapy for me just changed absolutely everything. And it was a no-brainer for me to walk away from boxing when I started feeling better. Ironically, when my health started coming back and I was winning again, I exited because I didn't need it anymore, and went into full-time therapy, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, I mean, it's so incredible. It's like it had such an impact on you. So it's cognitive hypnotherapy is what you practice, and that was your experience.
Yeah, cognitive hypnotherapy, for anyone who doesn't, I mean, it's the hypno part of that title is always a little bit misleading. It's not what you imagine hypnotherapy to be like. It's kind of like a mixture of traditional talking therapy and CBT, along with traditional hypnotherapy and NLP. But what I love about it, what I found brilliant about it, was that it's just this really fascinating creative journey. And I think that if we don't awaken our creative minds to the process of change, we won't really get to make it. I thoroughly believe that. And so for me, being able to, and it also makes it more fun. So being able to actually consider the amazing possibilities by using your imagination, and then being able to map your way towards it in fun, colourful, creative ways internally, means that it's a fascinating journey, and it needs to be for us to stick with it.
Yeah, totally. I think sometimes when we say things, you know this, I'm sure, from your clients and from everyone, all the feedback and stuff, when you say about getting creative or, you know, using your imagination, grown-ups, like we freeze generally, because it's like lots of, I mean, actually in Shelf Help, we have a lot of Shelfies who are very creative. But then there's the rest of us a bit more like, I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't do these things. And I think we just associate that with the being creative. But I think what I'm learning, what you would probably say, is that we're all creative in some way.
Yeah, we are. It's the biggest crime of our current sort of academic and schooling system that creativity just gets beaten out of us at a young age by trying to force it into a markable curriculum. And as soon as we start doing that, placing value judgments on creativity turns it into a competition that it just isn't. And because there's no ultimate way of winning that competition, so many of us end up believing that we aren't creative. And then we stifle everything. We start running away from anything that would look even vaguely creative. And it's probably the most common limiting belief, I think, really. I'm not creative.
Yeah, I mean, I said at the beginning, we're not going to ask you to draw anything or make anything, because you have done that previously, haven't you? We've done events where people have like come to make their mind monsters, which was Hazel's book that we featured actually on Shelf Help, Mind Monster Solution. Awesome if you're kind of dealing with any kind of self-sabotage or any of the stuff we're talking about tonight, basically. But yeah, we a few people on here were there as well. And yeah, we were kind of drawing our mind monsters and what we thought those limiting beliefs looked like. But it's like there was still a definite like resistance from lots of people, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, that's useful in the process as well. Like as long as you can get a room full of people and they don't know what they're doing beforehand, and then you get them to do it, it's fine, because then they have to do it and something comes of it. But if you tell people that's what they're going to be doing beforehand, people just won't sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. And well, we're hoping to change that with Betwixt.
Yeah, totally. So tonight, the workshop tonight, I think I was kind of purposely a bit ambiguous with the title. So everyone who's here like really is like just like super keen and interested in like in your work and the concept, I suppose, because we talk about mental resilience, we're talking about creativity, but then we're also talking about this game and the kind of gaming side of things. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the kind of this. So let's talk about Betwixt, which is your new passion project, well, and your new business. And so that is like, it's an interactive novel that is on an app. And so we think about games as a waste of time, maybe, or just a way to switch off. So the question at the beginning, guys, was like to kind of find out how you do change your brain and switch off. And there are a few people have said comedies, like lots of walks, listening to audiobooks, that kind of thing. But can you talk to us about some of the science for any non-believers out there about, you know, kind of why gaming and why something like when you use your imagination and get lost in it, why that's so good for our just general mental well-being, I suppose?
Yeah, there's so much to it. So first up, right, let me give you a little outline of what Betwixt is. So yeah, we're calling it an digital interactive novel. It's kind of like a digital choose your own adventure story. So it's a narrative, it's written, but it's delivered to you in small little snippets that pace themselves. So it's much more involving than sitting down and opening a book. The other thing is that there's an interactive immersive soundtrack. One of the fascinating things we've had so far is lots of people with ADHD feeding back that they've been able to stick with it for so much longer than they would do any kind of book, and they can't read any fiction, but they've loved this because they've been able to do it, because what we wanted to do was get people right into the world, right into the process, in order for it to be engaging and interesting. So you find yourself in this strange frozen world where the air is cold and the snow is thick. It's like this numbed out world. And it would be really easy to feel alone in a space like that if it wasn't for the comfort of a wise voice that speaks to you from somewhere in the back of your own mind. And it says, you can get out of here and I'll help you if you let me. So over the course of the game, the different chapters are called dreams, and you build a relationship with this voice, and it guides you through not only the world that changes. You discover that the very weather here is your emotion made manifest, and your thoughts control the world around you. And so gradually you learn how to use your resilience and different awareness building and emotional literacy building tools to affect and change this world that you're in. But also you're developing this amazing relationship with the voice, and you're developing a stronger relationship with yourself at the same time. The reason we wanted to do this So my co-founder is an incredible woman called Elitza Domanchiska, or Ellie. And she is, I mean, I've never known someone so driven and productive as she is. When we met, because she was editing a book with multiple writers in it, and I was one of them. It was called What Doesn't Kill You. So she'd been at that point researching mental health for some time, and she was doing lots and lots of really in-depth interviews with therapists from all different styles of therapy and counseling, and also therapy clients. And she kept hearing, when she was asking people what resources they had to help them with their mental health, she kept hearing people saying, this is amazing app called such and such, you know, it really helps you with it. And so she said, brilliant, how often do you use it? And they'd go, actually, I don't. And so she was like, this is really weird. Why does everyone keep pointing me towards apps that they're not actually using, but they swear are good? So she started asking them, well, what do you do? And probably one of the most frequent answers to that question was, I play video games. And another one up there was, I read fiction. I get myself involved in a story. And so she was like, how can we bring these things together? How can we make something as engaging and as fun as video gaming or reading a beautiful story that is actually not just a way of escaping your problems and calming yourself down, but is actually also designed to help you learn how to move through them? So she called me up and said, you know, would I be interested? The funny thing is, apparently she was really nervous for that call because she thought I was just going to laugh her down or say that it wasn't possible, which is what she'd heard from a lot of people before. What she didn't know is that I'm a lifelong gamer. And this was literally my dream job. And so I was sitting right there and I was going, come on, but at the same time trying to keep my cool. And that's how it all started. You know, I have been obsessed with games my whole life. My family connected through games. You know, my earliest memories of my dad are all about games, playing Rogue on our old Amstrad computer. I love gaming, and I think it's vital that we get into a gameful mindset when it comes to mental health, because it helps us to feel connected to people. And most importantly, I guess, well, there's a few things. One is the growth mindset, which is inherent in gaming. When you're playing a game, you are prepared to fail and fail and fail and fail until you don't fail, you know, and you keep failing and failing bigger and bigger and bigger until you get to the boss, and then you finally beat the boss, and then you start a new round of something and you fail and fail and fail. And that's how gaming works. Now, if we all applied that exact mindset to our personal lives, we would be smashing bosses all over the place. But for some reason, we don't do that automatically. So bringing a game mindset into mental health is a no-brainer for me. I think it's really important. The other thing, like a myth-busting thing for game, people think of gaming as a waste of time. I don't know where that started exactly, but there is no evidence to suggest that gaming is actually bad for your mental health, unless you're doing it to avoid the things you should be doing. But that's true of anything. Chewing gum would be bad for your mental health if you were doing it to avoid what you should be doing. Yeah. So those are kind of some of the key things. But then there's this other thing which I find fascinating, which is narrative identity. So narrative identity is basically a person's internalized, evolving life story, where you integrate the reconstructed and processed and reframed past with your imagined future, using this sort of narrative thread as if you're the hero of an epic tale that is your own life. And you do this, if you do this in the way that narrative identity sort of spells out, it gives you a sense of unity and purpose that might not otherwise be there. So this happens automatically in any story that you read or watch in a movie will have someone's life story spelled out like that. But we can apply it to our own lives. And when we do, it's basically like we get to be the hero. Now, this is not to be confused with hero complex. It's not about believing we're better than anyone else. It's not about thinking that we're the world's next savior, obviously. It's just about seeing yourself as a person with agency and importance and purpose. And people who apply this to their lives, they accept challenges and learn from them rather than feeling defeated by them. And that's probably the biggest gift, is it allows you to swerve away from that horrible sort of victimized powerlessness that we get otherwise when we come up against problems. People who practice this type of thinking also seek meaning in that challenge, right? So we look at the things we've been through, we find the meaning, and we turn that into something that is a strength going forward. That's quite a sort of stereotypical thing to say, but we aren't doing that enough. And then the main thing is this sense of agency. When we see ourselves as the hero, we feel active in the process of living and how the story plays out. We get to write it ourselves, essentially.
Yes.
So yeah, that's probably the main takeaway, is for people to feel like they are the the protagonist in the epic battle of their whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. I shared a quote of yours actually that I found on the interweb in today's email talking about tonight's event, and it was that it was exactly that. It was like, rather than seeing ourselves as this victim of life, if you can make that switch and see yourself, it's a journey and you're the hero of this journey. It's like, it's actually, yeah, as soon as I read that, it's so empowering. It's such a different, but it's also very hard, isn't it, to kind of take ourselves out of our situation and see it as part of a process rather than the immediate kind of trouble we're in or whatever.
I don't think it's hard. I just think we don't do it.
Sure.
I think there's actually, we'll look at this a little later. I mean, actually, it's quite easy to do. It's just about making ourselves do it. I think the hard thing is resisting the seductive lure of the drama, and we've all grown up as we've all been children at some point, and when you're children, you tend to get problems solved by crying or being cute or looking helpless. So we've all got a part of us that wants to just say somebody else do it. But of course, the more we use that, the more helpless we feel. So it's about being able to resist that temptation and choose the way. Do you know what, the one last thing I'll say on this, the narrative identity thing, there have been some really fascinating studies on that. One that looked at people sort of talking about their therapeutic journey, their journey through therapy, and they found that the people who automatically narrated that story as if they were the heroes of an epic tale had better wellness, better self-awareness and resilience, and also more maturity than the people who didn't. And then there was another study that was done, rather than retrospectively, it was done prospectively. And the people who were seeing their therapy process as they were going through it, again in this narrative intelligence frame, were focusing so much more on agency. They just felt so much more in control of the things happening because of this viewpoint and seeing themselves as the protagonist. So it's a massively powerful thing. And I guess that's, with Betwixt, we're doing it quite literally. We're literally making a story and you're in the middle of it. You're the lead character.
Yes, exactly. So very soon we're going to do, you're going to lead us through a journaling exercise, which is kind of going to, I suppose, explain this even more. So guys, get your pens and paper ready. And also everyone, I've seen a few questions. There's so much chat going on. I'm going to catch up in a minute as Hazel goes through the exercise. I have seen a few questions. So let us know in the chat box if you have any questions, and I'll put them to Hazel after our journaling exercise. I've seen one about kids already, dyslexia. Yeah, I'll make sure I make a note of all of them. But yeah, if everybody's ready, what do we need, Hazel, apart from our brains and our pen and paper? Anything else?
Nothing. Pen and paper. That's it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, okay. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to do some journaling. But before I teach you a trick with the journaling, I want you to have something to work with. So we're going to start with this mini exercise, if you like. I would like you to think about a challenging experience that you've been through. I would suggest you don't pick some major trauma or ongoing really big struggle. It would be better to pick maybe something that's happened recently. It could be an argument that was particularly uncomfortable. It could be bubbling resentment, an embarrassing moment. Or if there's nothing like that that's happened to you recently, then A, lucky you, and B, maybe you could think about something that's going to happen. So a lot of the time we've got something on the horizon that's a little bit frightening, an exam, an interview, a presentation. You could use something like that. So we need to have like a focus, and it needs to be something slightly uncomfortable, but not over the top uncomfortable. So I want to give you a couple of moments just to think of something like that and write it down at the top of your paper. Have you got something, Toni?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Happened just before the call, actually. So I'll talk
really?
about it. Yeah.
Nice and fresh. Perfect. Yeah, I just saw that comment. Yes, I want you to think of something. So I'm repeating what the instruction is. I want you to think of something that's been a struggle or a challenge for you. And this could be from any point in your life, actually, but you might want to pick something recent and fresh just for the ease of it. So it could be, the examples I was giving was, it could be an argument that you've had that was irking. It could be an embarrassing moment. It could be a failure, a mistake. It could be a moment when you said something mean, or it could be something that's coming up that you find intimidating or frightening. So a big challenge or an exam or something along those sorts of lines. You don't need to worry too much about what this is. It's definitely not, we're just using this as an example for you to try out the stuff. So as long as it was a non-positive moment, it will do. Okay, so I'm going to assume everyone's got that. If you need any more help, I'm keeping an eye on the chat here. So if you need any more help, just pop a question in. Now, what I want you to do, I'm going to time you for this. I would like you to spend 2 minutes only, which is really, really quick. So you're going to have to write fast and keep your pen on the paper to do a little journaling around that. What I want is for you to write down the key emotions that are involved in it, the thoughts that go through your mind, maybe make a note of the way that you behaved that you didn't like, if that's it, or the way somebody else behaved that you didn't like. So you're getting in there why it was uncomfortable, essentially. I want you to articulate as best as possible, as if you're explaining to somebody else, for them to understand how you feel about this or how you felt at that time. So before you begin that, close your eyes and think back to the moment, or consider the thoughts of the frightening thing coming up, and get right into your body. So invite the experience in fully, see it through your own eyes, hear what you heard or what you hear in that moment. Think the thoughts, feel the feelings. And then when you've got a real sense of that experience, open your eyes and just start writing. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Okay, so that should be enough for you to have got some of it out there. Does everyone feel that they got something down there? You don't need an enormous amount of detail on that one. And does anybody want to give any examples of the types of emotions that they are looking at, or the types of thoughts that they are looking at?
We're just going to do that chat box, right? Just so you know, because sometimes we do like interactive, because there's quite a few of us. We're just going to do that in the chat, if that's cool, in the chat box.
Annoyed, upset, not having a voice, out of control, don't understand. Yep. It really consolidated what I was thinking. Nervous, anxious, uncertain, fear of the unknown, rage, betrayed, oh, self-pitying, seeking sympathy. Yeah, okay, brilliant. You guys have totally nailed it. So put that to one side. Here's what we're going to do next. So most of us know that journaling can be a really beneficial part of any self-care routine, right? It's got a number of benefits. It helps us to self-reflect and build self-awareness. It allows us to put our thoughts into writing, which can gain clarity on what we're going through. It can also activate, we have to activate the neocortex, which is a part of the brain that doesn't deal with all of those, swarming dark emotions. Instead, it does language and rational thought. So that's a good thing. And on top of that, it can help us to develop our emotional literacy and improve our communication skills. So journaling is a good thing, except when it isn't. So there have been reams and reams of studies published on the therapeutic benefit of expressive writing or emotional journaling. And they all show that while some people make rapid and significant improvements to their mental health, but also to their behavioral patterns and even their physical health, by writing about moments of struggle, there are other people who make themselves feel worse. And there is quite a clear and quite simple difference between these two camps of people. Those who make themselves feel worse are writing from a self-immersed perspective, which means that they are staying rooted into their own pain, into their own perspective, rather than broadening their viewpoint and considering different points of view. So somebody in there said it really consolidated my feelings. The message disappeared very quickly. I didn't see what just was said before that, but that's it. Right, that's the problem with this, and I have intentionally set you up for writing those things down there, because we're going to use all of that to reframe. Like if you were journaling on the regular and you were writing from a self-immersed perspective, that just means basically rehashing your negative experiences. You would run the risk of compounding all the types of things that you've just written down, which is not helpful. And it can feel, and like I was saying before, the tricky thing is that sort of seductive lure of the drama. It can feel like a good thing to be doing at the time. We can convince ourselves that we're getting some kind of cathartic release out of it. But in the big picture and in the long run, it's not a great idea unless you're getting some proper reframing in there. So what I want us to talk about here is the alternative. The alternative to self-immersed writing is self-distanced writing. This is about creating a greater psychological distance from our own perspective and from the feelings involved in it. So in therapy, this will be used typically to help people reassess and reframe challenging experiences, perhaps from their childhood or anything that's happened in their life. I use it very, very often in my practice. And there are a number of different ways to self-distance. I'm going to give you a few. You can make a note of these, actually, because they'll be useful to you at any stage. And also in a bit, I'm going to ask you to do some self-distanced writing. So you're going to pick one. So method number one is like fly on the wall. You simply imagine the thing you're talking about. So if it was a memory of yesterday, you imagine yesterday as if you're a fly on the wall watching yourself go through whatever happened. Or if it's worry about the event in the future, you would imagine yourself watching yourself worrying. So whatever happens, you're taking a step away, physical step away from the person who's having the problem and viewing that person afresh from that angle. Option number two is slightly different. This is where you self-distance temporally. So by stepping out into your future, which could be next week, next month, next year, or 10 years into the future, and then looking back on what you've been going through that you want to reframe, can mean that you create the space for self-distancing in this time-based manner. It's really, really useful for feeling nervous about stuff. If you've got something like an interview coming up, you know how interviews are petrifying until you do them, and then afterwards you look back and think, I don't know why I was so worried. It was fine. That nothing's ever as bad as we think it's going to be. And so the temporal self-distancing can really help with that, because it helps us to remember that and to sort of integrate that more objective perspective. The final option, probably my favorite, is to self-distance by viewing the situation you've been going through from another person's position. So you could choose to look at the struggle you're going through from a wise person's point of view, or an objective observer, or a loved one, a friend or family member who knows you well and loves you and can see your strengths. The reason I love this one so much is because it really focuses on the building of empathy, self-empathy, which we don't get to practice otherwise. And it can really help us for anything that triggers shame, because as Brené Brown, so beautifully teaches, empathy is the antidote to shame. Shame does not exist while empathy is there. So we're teaching ourselves by self-distancing to create an empathetic connection with ourselves. We start to dissolve away the shame that otherwise makes those things really, really, really difficult. So those are the three ways: fly on the wall, temporal, or viewing through another person's eyes. What I'd like you guys to do to get a taste of the self-distancing magic is to write about the moment that you wrote about earlier on, but this time employing one of those techniques that I've just given you. When you do this, I'm going to give you a little longer for this one. I'll give you about 4 minutes, twice as long. I want you to really pay attention to anything that feels different from the self-distance perspective. So anything that just strikes you as slightly odd or feels slightly different, follow the chain of thought that one gives you. Some notes. Don't worry about spelling, grammar, style, just continue writing. Equally, don't analyze your thoughts as you're writing them down. You can do that later, just get it going, especially since we don't have very much time, let it flow. And probably most importantly, make sure that you stay in the distanced perspective. It's easy to accidentally slip back into the first person. So if you feel that the negative affect is increasing, you might have slipped back into the first person perspective. So if you notice that happening, step back again, perhaps repeat the self-distancing process by starting from the beginning again and continuing. Finally, when you're writing about this one thing, what I'd like you to make sure that you do, as well as exploring the situation from another's perspective, is explore the strengths and abilities that your distant self is displaying, right? So look at the skills and capacities that you have that are helping you get through that, and also look at the skills and abilities that you're learning and the strengths that you're gaining as a result of going through whatever it is. Even if it's just a tiny thing, there will be something in there that's worth learning and holding on to. So a recap of what you're doing. I'm giving you 4 minutes. You're going to self-distance either by being fly on the wall, stepping to the future, or looking through somebody else's eyes, and you're going to write about that same moment again for 4 minutes. Does that make sense, Toni? Is everyone?
I think so. Everyone got it? Let us know if not. Can I just ask a quick question, Hazel, actually? Yeah. If you're writing down, would you use your name then? If you're doing the third person one, would I say Toni did this, or I watched Toni do that, or it's...
Said that. So glad you asked that. Yes, everybody don't write I or me at all, no matter which version of this you're doing. Write he, she, they, or your own name.
Cool. Okay.
Keep it in the third person. Yeah. Desiree. So you guys, what you had done was just think of a struggling moment. So something recently that has happened that was uncomfortable. It could be anything from an argument you've had to something that was embarrassing or fearful, and you're going to write about it from a self-distance perspective. All right, I'm giving you your time. Off you go. Pop any questions you have in the chat. Teresa, no, you don't need to do I would have done or should have done at the moment. Just write about the experience and you can write about what that distant version of you is thinking and feeling from this new perspective. Just get involved in that a little more. 20 seconds left. Okay, I'm aware that that was rapidly fast, a little bit of journaling, but I hope that you've had enough time to sort of get an idea for it. I'm going to, Toni, my guinea pig, I'm going to go to you. Tell me about the difference between those two bits of writing, the immersed and then the self-distanced for you. You don't have to tell us the content.
I think the feeling, or I think what it looks like on the page.
Well, both, if there's something interesting to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I just wrote lots of like words for like bad feelings, really, of like how it felt, and there wasn't any kind of like cohesion. It was just like all these kind of like, you know, kind of scattered words. And then the second part, I've written it more like a story, and I've kind of like, yeah, it just felt straight away, even in my body, I just felt a bit calmer and softer and a bit not sad. I felt just like more compassion, I suppose, for like, and saw the situation from you know, beginning, middle, end, and onwards, rather than just like in the situation and feeling it's awful or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's amazing how different things can seem with the small switch. We're going to take this a step further in a minute, but first I want to sort of hear a little bit from the guys in the chat. If anyone wants to share a little bit about the difference in feel or the difference in language that you had in the two different scenarios. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, we all have these moments where we feel annoyed or embarrassed about something that happened at work just now. I mean, it's amazing how frequently these things are happening to us. More compassion. I mean, the compassion thing is it really. This is where it's going for me. I think that's the point of narrative identity, and it's the point of self-distancing. I can enjoy the writing process in itself, as well as rather than angrily scribbling disjointed words on the page. Yeah,
that's exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say, but said much better, Katie. Much more articulately.
Oh, I felt a sense of assertiveness that I didn't feel originally, but also that the emotion I felt was perfectly okay. That's excellent. Yeah. I felt proud of myself, how I handled the situation when I practiced the self-distancing. This is the other thing, right? So earlier on, Toni, we were talking about the difference between victim and hero. So in my book, I talk about there are 3 levels to this, and I think I mentioned this earlier on, author being the top one. We're doing 3 bits of writing here. I'm going to jump us into the last one in just a moment. And what I wanted to show you was those 3 different positions. So the first one, I asked you just to write the thoughts and the feelings. That's what you know, not to look beyond your own perspective. That was the victim place. You know, that was what we compound with victim thinking. This next one is hero. So the protagonist, you kind of made yourself the protagonist of the tale. You looked at the strengths and skills you were building. So you're telling this sort of like hero story. The next one we're getting to is the level up from that. So it's author. And the way we're going to do this is by really bringing in both fiction, the fiction story element of what we're talking about, and narrative identity. So before you do this, I'd like you just to look at your writing and circle some of the most sort of positive strengths or skills, or even just, you know, positive values that have come out of it, like some key shining, glimmering moments for you. And it only needs to be 2 or 3 words if that's all you have. So strengths, skills, virtues. And then when you've got that, what you're going to do for this last piece of writing is to imagine that this self-distanced hero self that you've just been writing about is basically considering the question, what happens next? So what you're going to be doing now is the future you. But you're going to go into fiction world, right? Because the future is fiction anyway. So this bit of writing can be in any genre you want it to be. It can just be real life, or you could go full on sci-fi, fantasy, rom-com, gritty, urban drama, don't care. You can go absolutely mad with this if you want to. But what's happening is this hero self in this future bit of writing is your future self, and they are going to use the struggle that you've just explored in some meaningful kind of way. So this means you'll need to consider 2 important questions. One is, what did I learn from that struggle? Or what did they learn from that struggle? You know, what was the meaning of it? What were the strengths and skills that came out of it? You've already got some of that because I asked you about it. And then the second question being, how can I use that? I want you to think of this as fiction. What I'm not asking you for is a realistic, actionable plan for your own future, because I'm giving you 4 minutes and I've put you on the spot. I'm not expecting that. What I want instead is for you to dream a little bit. So I want you to think about, you know, what are the massive things that a hero, based on the struggle you've just talked about, could achieve? Like, what could they build? What are the changes they could make? I want this to be enormous. It doesn't need to be reality-based. You know, you could end up writing about some crazy metaphor, you know, an encounter with an alien, or colonizing Mars, or you know, leading a group of people through a zombie apocalypse. Or you can just write about, you know, an ideal future self who's really super strong and has all the strengths that you have. The only thing here is, like, not to limit yourself at all. So if you can't think of anything that feels realistic, go into crazy land. Totally fine. Any questions about that? I know that's kind of a big ask. Yes.
Kind of question. Is it a timeline or not? Because it's fiction, so it's not like by this time next week this would have happened.
No, definitely not. No. You start, the jumping off point is the struggle that you've written about, and from that point forward, it can be anything you want to. So if you want to go with a kind of a real version of Toni Jones in the future, you can get a sense of how far ahead this is. You know, when there are no schools anymore, it's just shelf help. And
that is
next week. Yeah, that is the future, so David. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you don't, it's really like, you don't have to have a timeline in this. This is not, like I say, it's not a plan, it's a dream. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. But if not, just put your pen to the paper, don't take it off the paper. You've got 4 minutes, write your hero future story. Let it be anything you want it to be.
I think I need to aim a bit bigger, looking at the chat box. Does anyone else feel a bit silly when they're writing this? Like, is that normal? Because I do feel a bit, it's like nice, but like silly, but like happy, but silly.
Of course. It's a really playful thing to do, and that's why I wanted to mention zombie apocalypses and things. Apocalypse. What's the plural of apocalypse?
You don't need one. That's it. We don't need more.
Yeah, we don't need more. Yeah, that's why I mentioned that, because this is a hard thing to do, and this is about. I'm going to explain a little bit why I'm asking people to do such a big sort of dreamy thing. But yeah, I've invited the cone heads to sort it out. Yeah, struggle so much to put on my cape, totally. I'm going to give you an extra minute. Well, not an extra minute, the remaining minute. Then we'll move on. Okay, while people are finishing up, Toni, do you want to talk again a little bit about, so the difference, what I actually want you all to do is to look at your 3 bits of writing and to look at the different tone in each of them. So we've talked already about the difference in tone between the first 2. How does this one differ from those other ones? What did you get, Toni?
So just kind of hopeful and yeah, positive again, big thinking. I've written the words love and light, so that's always a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I find the kind of visualizing stuff and looking forward quite hard. I think I'm okay. I think I'm better almost at the like looking at things as a third person and being like, and like logically saying that wasn't as bad as you thought because all these others, you know, exactly what we did in part 2, and then part 3. I'm still finding that a bit tricky, but it's fun to do.
It's totally it. I mean, what we're talking about here really is like there's a pyramid I sometimes look at, which is looking at the building blocks of how people move through therapy. So at the bottom, people are in crisis. They move from crisis to stable. And really sort of crisis is kind of like that first bit of writing we were talking about there, the victim part. Then moving from crisis to stable is being able to step back and take a more objective perspective. So that's the hero part. But we tend to get to stable and think, okay, I've done what I needed to do. But we didn't. There's a layer above that, which is thriving, which is where we all actually want to be.
Yeah.
But it's the hardest step, because in order to go there, we have to dream. We have to unlock our imaginations, and we have to let go of things that have felt true our entire lives. And most of those things are things we don't want to hold on to, like I'm not good enough, or, you know, I'm not acceptable, or it's too frightening to be visible. It's too frightening to be exposed. All these things, we have to move through those to get from stable to thriving. And this is the bit where we get that. This isn't just about, you know, managing anxiety. The hero part, the self-distancing, that's great for managing anxiety. But this is about leveling up, which is why it's harder.
Yeah.
And it's why we feel silly.
I like what you said earlier, right? It's practice, right? It's just we just don't do it enough. Like we're not in the practice of doing this. So it's like the more we do it, the more it will come more naturally to us.
Yeah, it's a muscle. And like I said earlier on, it's creativity is the muscle that gets weakened by just the system that we have to go through as kids in school, which is why this is super, super important. But what did everyone else feel about the different tones? I'll tell you what normally happens, and then you can tell me if I'm right. So what normally happens is the first one feels like sort of burnt out, defeated, negative affect. The second one, we start to focus a bit more on resilience and, you know, determination and strength. And then the third one is where what I think you usually see in this third one, which is really beautiful, is people finding their own sense of belonging, or, you know, dreaming about really knowing their place in the world, seeing something bigger in themselves and seeing themselves as a part of something bigger.
Yeah.
That's where the dreaming bit goes. I'm just going to have a look at some of the quotes here before we move on.
Do you know what, Hazel? That's exactly, because mine was about, no one will be surprised to know it's about my dog. And we just went to the park. He's a rescue dog, and we were having a really nice time. And then another dog came over, and it just went wrong. And I didn't know how to handle it, and that's a horrible feeling. And that kind of, and he was scared, and I was scared, and all that kind of stuff. And then the third one, he's actually living a confident, resilient life and traveling the world with us as a healing dog, and like spreading love and light. So it's like, you're right. It's like passing that going from a situation which was just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I'm shit at this, to we're going to change the world with this one little dog.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this is it. I mean, it's become such a commonplace thing to talk about, learning from, growing from our wounds and finding meaning in struggle, that it's become a cliche, and lots of people sort of poo-poo the idea because of that. But if we don't do that, we just walk around with the wounds exposed the whole time. And there is something to turn into, your example is brilliant, because you can even turn an experience with a misbehaving puppy, into something that feels like your personal sense of purpose and the reason for you being on this planet. That's just epic. This is it. Like when we started writing Betwixt, the tagline was making mental resilience epic. Which we don't use so much anymore, because people are always like, what the hell are you talking about? But that's it. Like, there's so much excitement to be had when you do this kind of work, and it should be fun, and it should be silly, and all this stuff we're talking about here, because as soon as it is, that's when the magic happens. That's when the really interesting stuff comes out. Fun, someone's just said there.
Freedom. Love that.
Yeah. I'm going to really look forward to reading all of these properly later, because I can't do it now. We're gonna. Can you export these comments, by the way, before we?
Yeah. So what happens is they save down at the end. So I'll if anybody that watches the video after gets all the comments as well, and I can send them to you. I'll send them to you as a thing.
Awesome. So having done a bit of dreaming, we're going to now close our eyes and chill the hell out and let dreaming continue at an unconscious level. So you can put your pen and paper away and get yourself comfortable. This is what I'm going to take you through is an adaptation of the first guided meditation that's used in Betwixt. So in Betwixt, it's part interactive story, and then in between the chapters there are guided meditations, and there's going to be journaling prompts in there next when we've built that section too. So you get to do this kind of work sort of couched in the story's arc. And so this is an adaptation of the first one, and I wanted to write it in a way that gave you a taste of the game world. So, actually, before you do it, I did have a big thought experiment for us to do here. We don't have time for it, but instead I'm going to ask you one question. And the question I'd like to float is this: what's one thing you want more of in your life? And when you're starting to consider that question, think of the things that turned up in your third piece of writing, the things that showed up as real, meaningful yearnings, real things that would add to your life. This is an important question to ask yourself, because we don't answer it naturally. When we are thinking about change, what we do is we focus on reducing the thing we don't want rather than creating the thing we do want. So if you ask anybody with anxiety what they want out of their therapy, they'll tell you they want to feel less anxious. But if you say, what does that mean? If you're feeling less anxious, what would you be more of? They falter. Even just coming up with the word calm takes a moment. And then thinking about what calm would actually feel like, that's a big question. And so we need to ask this question of what we actually want in order to familiarize our mind with it and begin moving towards it. Otherwise, we just keep walking into the same old problem because we're just focusing on the same old thing. So we're going to look at answering this question in this meditation. And I would like you just to float it right now. What do you want? What's something you want more of? What's something that you need to appreciate more? What's something you need to give more time to? Hopefully by the end of the meditation, you'll have a nice sort of idea or image of this. But first, with your eyes closed, I'd like you to imagine that you're stepping into a magical frozen world where the air is crisp, the snow so thick you could part it like a curtain, and the wind, it whistles and calls over an endless white plain. Squinting hard, you can make out the blurry outlines of a shape in the distance. It takes you a few moments to recognize it for what it is. An enormous tree, far, far away. Its naked branches shimmer, encased in ice. And they spread across the horizon, so broad they could embrace the entire world. Welcome to the in-between. This is a place that belongs entirely to you. So take a breath and settle in. Remember that you're safe here, warm even, sheltered from the cold by a growing sense of curiosity, as if a part of your mind is already wondering about just what it could be that you're seeking, whatever it is that you most need from this short time. And so, you can allow this magical space that you're creating to gradually fade into view, breathing slowly in and then out as the snow continues to fall. The tiny crystals land gently on your skin, where they pause for a moment before melting and rolling off onto the ground of this world within, where you're always allowed to just be still and quiet, feeling however it does feel for you to slow down and rest, to let go of the urge to do or achieve, to strive or change, to think or worry or plan, letting it all go. And you can. Focus now on the feeling of your breathing. The air flowing slowly down through your chest and into your stomach. Your lungs and ribs expanding. And then as you breathe out through the mouth, even slower still, like a long, relaxing sigh, letting it all go. And I wonder if you can just let your muscles relax a little more each time you exhale, almost as if your body is melting, sinking into the most comfortable position that it can find. A sense of peace or freedom, that gentle stillness that comes from the rhythm of your breathing, naturally and easily. So you can allow your breath to return to the most comfortable pace, whatever's right for you, both in and out through the nose now. Noticing the difference in your muscles as they let go a little more every time you exhale. You could notice another part of your body softening, slowly and easily. And if you like, you can imagine that you're breathing out the old fears too. Breathe out doubt. Breathe out the limits, because you don't need those things. Right here, right now, you can let it all go. And invite instead a sense of spaciousness and possibility. Invite instead the freedom to see what you want to see with clarity. Almost as if you're clearing the snow from the sky of the in-between, warming the world around you. And it's different for everyone. So I can only wonder how you might imagine this clearing of the weather. Whether it starts with a light parting the clouds above you, or whether you just notice that the snow is growing thinner, the space opening up, clarity where once there was only white noise. Because there are so many ways in which you could see this happening now as you breathe to your world too, both outside and in. A new sense of space opening up for you as you just breathe, gently and slowly. So imagining the sound of the wind dying down as the blizzard eases, and a sense of lucidity growing, stretching out around you as the blue skies begin to shine through, almost as if you're creating that for yourself. With every mindful breath, moving closer and closer to a grounded state of connectedness. Body and mind together, working in harmony to create the kind of space and possibility that would serve you best. And then, I wonder if you can see it. If your imagination would choose to, look out for a moment over the vast plain that stretches all the way up to the horizon, peaceful and open, free, with ice so fine it looks like white sand. The gentle wind of your own breath, sweeping the drifting snow into a swift, cold river that can flow and change, moment to moment, just as your thoughts and emotions do too, because everything passes through, everything changes, and that's a good thing. And so just like this world, your world is always changing, and your mind too. Every minute of every day you're learning, experiencing, reassessing the thoughts and feelings that once bothered you, fading in importance as if you're stepping away, so that you could turn your attention away from the problems and onto the solutions, away from being just stable and onto thriving. A whole world of possibility is waiting for you as you gaze out over this magical landscape, taking it all in. The endless white plain, the tree with its shimmering branches, encased in ice, and whatever else you might choose to imagine here too. Because I just wonder if you could bring anything into your in-between, what would you choose to bring? What is it that your mind is asking for right now? Because it could be that you'd imagine something symbolic of a deep need here, something that represents freedom or peace, something that speaks to your mind of connection or change or creativity. An image forming before your eyes, perhaps, that can remind your mind of what you're choosing to move towards, those things you actually want. Or it could be that you'd see something here now that you already have in your life, a person, pastime, or belonging that you value. Something or someone that you want to remember, to appreciate, or to enjoy fully. A loved one, perhaps, or your health, your work, your family. Perhaps you choose now to just remember the little things that can help your day to feel better, brighter, or more whole. And so, almost as if you're setting an intention now, take this moment to see whatever it is that you need to see. Whatever it is that you want more of in your life. Or whatever it is that you need to fuel with a new sense of energy. Create it here so your mind can see the direction you're choosing. And finally, because we tend to get more of what we focus on in life, I'd like you to remember that it's always worth taking a moment to dream. to direct your attention inwards and to notice how calm or still you can feel as you plan for the little changes that can make a big difference. How you can invite a sense of clarity back to your waking world, to give your body and mind a tangible sense of what you're asking for. This simple gift of feeling free to be the person you want to be, and to enjoy the process of doing that. Because over the coming days, it could come as a sweet surprise to find yourself really having fun, just being you. And you can you not? So all I really need to do to allow your unconscious mind all the time that it needs to begin moving you in that direction that you most want to go is to ask you to take another deep, refreshing breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, so that when it feels comfortable and natural, and when your unconscious mind has taken all the time that it needs to bring a little piece of this clarity back to whichever part of your world needs it the most, then you can allow your eyes to open and reconnect with your story.
Thank you.
How's everyone feeling?
I feel like I just want to float off now. It was just, do you know what I loved? It was almost like a blank slate. And that feeling is just, and that you can just do anything and create anything is so great, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you the voice in the app?
I am. I'm not the voice in the story. I'm the voice of the meditations, but
brilliant.
It's really funny. I got an email the other day from somebody feeding back. We're getting these amazing feedback emails. It's wonderful. And somebody fed back. They said something about something. And then at the end of it said, oh, by the way, I just need to tell you that the woman you've hired to do the speaking has this amazing voice that's just really calming. And it's like nothing I've ever heard before. You must tell her that it's great. And I was like, oh, that's me.
Take the credit. You do. It's, yeah, you do have a lovely, it's a very calming presence.
Oh, I'm just reading the comments here.
Yeah. Rainbows.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Just before we go, have you got a few more minutes in case anyone does have any extra questions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, if you feel like you need to just float off, fine, we won't take it personally if you're feeling all zen and lovely. But if you do have any more questions, then yeah, we've got a few more minutes, so let us know. Hazel, there was one question specifically earlier on which I saw. Teresa asked about, would something like this help children with dyslexia, is what was a specific question, but I'm just wondering about children generally as well.
What, the app?
Yeah.
Or the journaling process? We haven't written the app for kids, which doesn't mean it's got like adult content and that they shouldn't use it, but it's a bit intelligent for kids. I think the sort of, actually we really wanted to find a perfect sort of pocket of age of our users, and so we tested with hundreds of people to try and look for patterns, and we couldn't find any. We were getting great comments from people sort of late teens. That was the youngest we got them from, up into their 60s. The only thing that we noticed as a thread is that the people who loved the app tended to be people who were interested in imagination in some way, either being imaginative themselves or involving themselves in imaginative stuff. So late teens, if they're of that kind of thinking, I would say absolutely. And the ADHD thing, somebody's just mentioned 18-year-old with ADHD. This is, I mean, we're really interested in finding out. I think I mentioned earlier on that we've been getting emails from people with ADHD. And we're really interested in finding out if those people were anomalies, or I think it makes sense that it would be good. Interestingly, actually, I'm not going to say that. That's not necessary. Yeah, so I mean, I think that ADHD could be perfect for it. We're also interested to see if people on the spectrum with Asperger's or autism could benefit for similar sorts of reasons. We've had good feedback from 2 people with autism as well. So we're really interested in that, but in general, it's for adults.
Yeah, and is that because of the immersiveness of it, that it's kind of it's people with ADHD or like you say, some of the other if you're on the spectrum at different levels, is it because you're able to kind of hold on to the noise, the sound, the descriptiveness, all that kind of stuff?
I think that the ADHD and dyslexia will be because of that. And if there is, if there's something in there that's helping people with autism, it's probably because it creates this sort of safe space where it's possible to have this human feeling conversation with somebody who doesn't bring with it all of the stress of that. There are lots of people who feel extremely safe online, but very unsafe in front of a person, and just visiting a therapist would feel like too big a leap for them. And we definitely wanted it to be possible for those people to have those same conversations. So yeah.
Someone's just asked a question about using it in conjunction with therapy or other work on trauma. I suppose, it's just another tool, isn't it, to use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you wanted to use it in conjunction with therapy, you'd want to just check with your therapist that feels like the right thing to do. I mean, what we want to do at some point is have like a training for therapists to use this with their clients, because it's just a great thing to give people as a nice homework experience. And it would be helpful if there are certain things that crop up in it that are common themes, of course, and there are some theories, like theory of drivers from transactional analysis plays a big role in it. You pick this persona, which is sort of like your character or your superpower. So there are things like that and that people would be familiar with, but you can use it alongside that stuff. I have no idea whether it would be useful for somebody diagnosed with BPD or PTSD. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be enormously helpful. It's not going to treat PTSD. Let's put it that way. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be helpful as the meditations and things like that as a calming addition to any other kind of therapy, maybe. And I've got no idea about borderline, whether it's helpful or not. I haven't looked into it, and I'm not qualified to guess either, so I shan't.
Sure.
Clementine is available in the US. Yes, Clementine available everywhere. Yeah.
Awesome. I think Caro's done a link drop with all the links for everything. Basically, we need to go to lockdown 4 to be able to just kind of get into this Betwixt for and get all the content. Thank you, guys. Yeah, any more questions, let us know quickly. Otherwise, thank you, Hazel, for being here. Thank you for sharing that. It was really awesome to do it. And I didn't really know what to expect. I think all of us were a bit like, we'll just go with the flow and see what happens. And it's been, as always, a total pleasure. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me and for being so open to the crazy suggestions.
Yeah, it's awesome. So guys, I'll resend a follow-up email tomorrow and we'll have all the links to I think most people will be playing the app tonight. You're like, sorry, not sorry, you'll be up late tonight. But
don't binge it, take it a bit at a time.
And so Shelfies, we'll see you online next week where we'll be talking about the book at the moment again. And if you're not a Shelfie, we'll be announcing our new book on the 1st of July. There'll be a new title, and the only clue we'll give you, it's about happiness. We're going to have a happy summer at Shelf Help. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Caro, for being our awesome support. And Hazel, I'll send you the transcript as well, so you can see what everyone was talking about when it was going a bit speedy. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening and take care.
Bye.
Bye.